All right, let's just dive right in. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to unpack how a single, ordinary morning in a quiet London garden somehow birthed one of the most profound, enduring meditations on human existence in all of English literature. We are, of course, talking about the incredible John Keats and his absolute masterpiece, Ode to a Nightingale. You know, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the heavy weight of the world and just wanted to literally escape it all, you are going to find a very kindred spirit in Keats today.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a morning in Hampstead, examine the burden of mortality, listen to the immortal bird's song, unpack this amazing concept called negative capability, and finally, look at the limits of escape.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, A Morning in Hampstead.
Now, to really understand the soaring philosophy of this poem, we have to look at the intense emotional whiplash Keats was experiencing right at this specific moment in time. Back in December of 1818, Keats was grieving, and I mean grieving heavily. He had just watched his younger brother Tom die of tuberculosis, which, tragically, is the exact same disease that would soon claim his own life. So, seeking some kind of refuge, he moves into a house called Wentworth Place. But then, just a few months later in April, the Braun family moves into the other half of that very same house, and Keats falls deeply, passionately in love with Fanny Braun. It's precisely in this crazy crucible of profound grief on one hand and thrilling new love on the other that Keats experiences this unparalleled explosion of creativity.
Picture this for a second. It's the spring of 1819. Keats is just 23 years old. He takes his chair from the breakfast table, drags it outside to the grass plot, and sits beneath a plum tree in the garden. Well, a nightingale has built a nest nearby, and for literally 2 or 3 hours, he simply sits there, listens, and scribbles on scraps of paper. That brief little sanctuary of tranquility gave us a poem that has echoed through the centuries.
I always love anchoring these massive literary achievements to just mundane, everyday reality. Keats was lodging with his friend Charles Brown in this leafy London suburb of Camden. He was paying £5 a month in rent, plus, half the liquor bill. He's dealing with his own failing health and these frustrating financial constraints that would ultimately prevent him from ever marrying Fanny. And yet, this exact, superordinary environment provided the perfect incubator for an astonishing burst of genius, yielding 5 of his 6th-grade odes in a single spring. It's just wild to think about.
Moving on to Section 2, The Burden of Mortality.
Listen to this opening line of the ode. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains. It immediately plunges us right into the profound physical and emotional exhaustion of the speaker. It isn't just sadness, right? It's a literal bodily ache. It's a paralyzing numbness brought on by the sheer trauma of living.
And this brilliantly illustrates the central tension of the entire poem. On one side, we have human life, which Keats describes with brutal honesty as full of the weariness, the fever, and the fret. It's transient. It's plagued by youth growing pale, by illness, and by the really tragic reality that beauty simply fades. But then, on the exact opposite side, we have the bird's song. It's enduring, it's timeless, it's universal, and most importantly, it is utterly free from the pain of human decay.
Because Keats is so hyper-aware of his own mortality right now, the poem is absolutely steeped in death imagery. We're talking hemlock, the river Lethe, being embalmed in the darkness. But Keats does something incredible here. He portrays death in 2 totally distinct ways. First, there's death as this negative, terrifying force, the palsy and the fret. But then there's also death as a deeply tempting, positive release from suffering. He actually calls it easeful and rich. Death kind of becomes this fantasy of a pain-free escape.
All right, let's shift gears a bit for Section 3, The Immortal Bird's Song.
So Keats takes this little bird singing in a London garden and elevates it into an immortal bird. Now, obviously, he knows the literal biological bird is going to die eventually, but the nightingale here is acting as a powerful symbol. Its song represents an idealized, timeless, artistic world. It's pure, direct communication, straight from nature, completely unburdened by human intellect or the clumsy necessity of words.
Listening to this pure, uninterrupted music actually brings the speaker to a staggering realization. He says, "Now more than ever seems it rich to die." The beauty of the song is so overwhelming to him, and the contrast with his own pain is just so stark that he wants to simply surrender to death right in that perfect, ecstatic moment. He wants to go out on a high note, quite literally.
Keats realizes that while individual birds die, and individual humans die, the song itself survives. He imagines this exact same song being heard across ancient generations by both emperor and clown. He even echoes the Greek myth of Philomel, connecting the nightingale to this timeless lineage of art born from tragedy. The bird essentially proves that artistic expression possesses a kind of immortality that we, trapped in our physical bodies, can just never achieve.
Now, this brings us to Section 4, Embracing Negative Capability. This is an absolutely crucial part of his philosophy.
So how exactly does Keats reconcile all this? Well, this is the philosophical core that truly unlocks Keats's genius. In a letter to his brothers back in 1817, Keats coined this term, negative capability. It's basically the ability to exist in uncertainties, mysteries, and doubts without stubbornly reaching for hard facts or absolute logic. It's literally a philosophical superpower. While other poets were out there trying to find neat little answers or permanent solace, Keats realized that to truly experience the beauty of life, you have to accept its ambiguity and its impermanence.
In the ode itself, we see the speaker practicing this by trying out different vehicles to escape his reality and merge with the bird. First up, he tries intoxication, longing for a draught of vintage, a bit of wine to slip away. Then, he tries immersing himself purely in his physical senses in the dark, tender as the night. But ultimately, he chooses creativity. He relies on the viewless wings of poesy, the invisible wings of poetry and human imagination, to lift him up into the canopy with the nightingale.
But, Keats is way too honest to pretend this is some permanent solution. He realizes that the imagination is deeply paradoxical. Sure, it's an incredibly liberating force that can elevate us out of our profoundest sorrows, but it is also incredibly fragile. It's a temporary fix. Our minds simply cannot permanently sever our ties to the physical world, no matter how beautiful the poetry is.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, The Limits of Escape.
Look at how this whole idea builds across Keats's work in 1819. In Ode to a Nightingale, he's actively seeking temporary flight and escape. Compare that to Ode on a Grecian Urn, where he looks at figures frozen in time on a piece of pottery. They have permanence, sure, but they are lifeless. They can never actually kiss or move. Finally, into Autumn, he achieves this total grace, fully embracing natural decay as a beautiful, necessary part of the cycle. You can literally see his philosophy maturing in real time, moving from desperation to profound acceptance.
So returning to our Nightingale, the poem ends almost cinematically. The visionary journey just abruptly collapses. The bubble pops. The bird simply flies away, its song fading past the near meadows. The spell is broken. The speaker is pulled violently back into the heavy, mortal reality of his own body, sitting right there under the plum tree. The word forlorn acts like a tolling bell, waking him up from his reverie. And he leaves us with this final, lingering question. Fled is that music? Do I wake or sleep? Keats doesn't hand us an easy answer here. He forces us to sit in that negative capability. Was the beautiful escape of the imagination the true reality, and this painful physical life merely a bad dream? Or is art just a beautiful way to help us sleep through the harshness of being awake? It's a powerful, completely unresolved thought that really challenges us to look at the role of art and imagination in our own lives.